This afternoon, we have a great and very interesting guest that we're genuinely pleased to welcome on board. This is Hamish McLay. Welcome to another edition of the Business Spotlight, everybody. Hamish has come along today to tell us all about his business, which is called Search and Convey Solutions. So Hamish has been in business for 20 years this year in this particular organization and specializing in relieving stress from property transactions is their unique value proposition. They serve England and Wales and have helped tens of thousands of people move home and business. So without further ado, Hamish, tell us all about it. We're keen to learn. Please, over to you.
So where do you want me to start?
Well, start at the beginning, because people in the viewers and the listeners are maybe they're a little further down the line, but probably not as far as you. So tell us.
Right, let's give you a lifetime story, or go back to an earlier lifetime. I was a teacher.
Okay.
And one of the aspects of the school I was teaching at, I had accommodation because it was actually a private school, where I eventually finally sort of left. I was assistant head there, and I was moving into engineering. So it was essential that I got out of my property to let the incoming assistant head get into the property before the start of the new term.
Okay.
And anybody knows anything about conveyancing, it was one serious battle. I ended up driving around the countryside, getting signatures from everybody to try and sew this whole thing together so I could get out in time for the other guy to get in.
Right.
And it came pretty darn close. We made it within a day. But I realized then there was something about it. And over time, working, if you like, through my sort of engineering, I then actually sort of came with the opportunity that somebody had actually spoken to me about a business where you could support local solicitors to cut down the time of the transaction if somebody was to jump in there, work with local authorities and get the information together. So that's how we started off. So it was purely just working with those local authority searches, grabbing that information for local solicitors. Obviously, it was a bit of a learning curve, but that's what we started doing. Because then that covered, we started off with Oxfordshire. And of course, once you can do Oxfordshire, I mean, they've only got 5 councils. So we're right on the border here. We're right on the border of Buckinghamshire. We're right on the border of Warwickshire, Northamptonshire. Yeah. Sky's almost, but then once you get into Buckinghamshire, next you bump into Hertfordshire.
Yeah.
And then once you get into South Oxford, there's Berkshire. And then So, but we expanded. So eventually we have become, and I do have a team now. We've expanded a team. So we actually look after ourselves about 25% of all of the councils in England and Wales.
Okay, interesting.
But I also, which is absolutely sort of great, what we've been able to do is, because of my relationship and experience within the business, I'm actually a board member of the organisation which covers England and Wales, which is the Association of Independent Property Search Agents, IPSA for short. But what we have is with throughout that organisation, that operation, we have somebody who covers every single council in England and Wales. So if somebody wants to buy a property anywhere throughout any of the counties, and they're experienced people like me.
Did you have a cap? Did you have a vision, a deadline? Not a deadline, that's the wrong phrase. Did you an end game? When you stepped into this business and you got the seed and the genesis of the idea and you begin gathering momentum, did you know where it was going 20 years later?
I didn't have a clue. However, I was absolutely convinced, because it was such a fantastic idea, or so that I thought.
Of course, yeah.
Once I'd set my operation up, I could get all the family members involved. And we could be setting up an operation, with a family down in Dorset. We could get an office set up in Dorset with a family up in Manchester, one up in Manchester. And this was, to me, a great, great idea.
And not Scotland, then?
Well, the thing is, Scotland's, their laws are rather different.
Okay.
I've still got
it's a legal issue. Okay.
Yes, because the Law Society covers England and Wales only.
Of course, I understand that. That
So
makes total sense now. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
sort of different.
I
That's what we
just
started doing.
I just assumed with the surname and with the backdrop photograph, there's most definitely a Celtic theme running through here. I would, you know, we need an expansion plan.
Well, they're
Come on, Hamish.
still on the cards. Interestingly enough, we do work for a company that's based in Glasgow.
Okay.
Strangely, they actually cover the whole of the country as well, England and Wales.
Oh,
So
do
I
they?
can speak to them
Okay.
about what they do in Scotland, but I haven't been able to do it yet. I've got enough. I've got enough on my plate. We need to sort of
Okay.
add to the team, add to the team. But yes, very much the case. But that was local authority searches, because when you go to buy a property, you need to know what that property is about.
Yes, of course.
What type, what's the type of countryside that it's in, or the type of city it's in, the type of town it's in. Is it a conservation? All these, there's massive things you need to know about a property.
So how do you fit in alongside the typical conveyancing solicitor? You know, for the people that are watching and listening, majority will own their own property or will want to own their own property. So what you know, right now I am going through a conveyancing process myself. I'm in the hands of my solicitor. So what is it that you guys would bring to that process that they don't?
Well, the interesting thing is, you're probably falling in the same trap as me, to be quite honest, Alice, because I assumed, this is going way back when I bought the first property, I assumed that the solicitor did everything. However, they don't. They're legal experts. So they do actually look after the legal side of things. Stuff like the local authority, they don't know. They have to go to the local authority or somebody like us to get the information that the local authority hold about the property you're about to buy.
I see.
So
Interesting.
they very often call it, and those of you out there sort of listening, you'll probably remember that you had to pay for disbursements,
Yes.
which is the sort of money that the solicitor had to pay out for people like us, or to land registry. There's
I
so many things involved. You don't want to know. You don't want to know. I mean, we answer in excess of 100 questions in terms of reports that we do, and we're only a part of what goes on, because you need to know what the environment's like. So there's environmental searches.
Of
You need to
course.
know what's happening with drainage and water. You need the
Yeah.
drainage and water searches. You need to know, are there any registered commons? There's so many things now the solicitor doesn't know that. He has to get the reports. Now, what we do is provide all of the reports that the solicitor needs to actually carry out their work.
So let's circle round a little bit away from the specifics of search and convey for a minute. Isn't it interesting just how eclectic the small business world is? So far on Spotlight, we've interviewed technology-based businesses, we've interviewed logistics-based businesses, we've interviewed wine importation. Today we have search and convey and many, many more. Truly fantastic, right? And the one thing that we all have in common is that we're all fighting the good fight in terms of business ownership, making it work as a business. So tell me about business planning, Hamish. How do you guys plan in your business? Your own plans, as it were.
Well, my own plans are sort of fairly straightforward. I mean, it is my business, so I control it. So I'm providing the plans for me and my particular sort of team. I'm responsible for business development as well. So effectively, what I do, I give myself a general guideline and look to what I want to achieve over a 12-month period. And this I tend to actually sort of carry out in the latter part of the year, but I don't actually implement it normally until the start of March,
Okay.
which seems actually strange to a lot of people. But what has happened traditionally with house purchases, the year would start really. The volumes would actually sort of tend to start in March as
Brilliant.
Easter approached. However, it's changed now. I mean, the whole thing's changed. So I do it over 12 months. So I get a brief idea of where I wanted to. I need to measure where I was, what I'd look at the last year, what I wanted to achieve the next year. Then
Okay.
basically we've got that chunk in the middle. How do you get from point A to point B? This is all
Fantastic.
written down on a spreadsheet.
Okay, perfect.
Then I break it down into what I do. So I put it down roughly over 12 months, because you don't know what the heck's going to happen in 12 months.
Of
I
course.
imagine we're going to have a different government. They'll screw up house purchase, and people will stop buying and think, oh no, what's going there? Whatever. So I've got the plan that I want to actually sort of adhere to. And I never beat myself up for not achieving that, because I don't know what I'm going to hit in the way. I do try and cover for eventualities. I split it into 4 segments for the 4 quarters.
Perfect.
And then what I actually do, once I've brought it back, I bring it back down, bring it back. And then what I do is put it in 12-week segments for those,
Okay.
and then put it down into, so I work a 12-week plan.
Nice.
So as of the beginning of March, we'll be working for those sort of 12 weeks. They're actually going to sort of take us for that, if you like, our first quarter of that particular year that we're operating.
Hamish, that ranks as one, I would say, amongst the very best answer to that question that we've ever had. Because what you've said there is, okay, we understand that the how period is the next 12 months, but I love the fact that you're advising our listeners and viewers to break it down into 4 sprints, each one of roughly 12, 13 weeks. This is great stuff. So, and you're using a simple spreadsheet. There is no need for complexity. Complex software systems are wonderful if they're necessary, but just a good old-fashioned spreadsheet works just as well, right? Tell us about the 5 and 3 year, the longer and the mid-term. Have you got any kind of visualization going on there? Do you use anything, or do you specifically identify mid to long-term goals, or are you letting that take care of itself? How are you working there?
In a way, I do have an overview, and I sort of look to what I have actually sort of been looking. So in actual fact, when we get to 2028, that is,
Yeah,
there is, if you like, I've got what I would like to have achieved by the time we get to 2028. So
that's
I do have
25
that
years,
vision. I
right?
do have that in mind. So that came as part of the sort of 5-year plan, and I've got that. And of course, what I've done, I've pulled out what I did actually with my 12-month. I put the steps in there from going back from my phone, and I know what I want to achieve by this time next year. Effectively, what I want to achieve to take me where I need to be in
Excellent.
2028. So
Okay.
yes, so I do have a vision. I do have an idea. And I do have the type of operation in mind.
That's oh, there's a little pause in the internet there. Is that, forgive me, we ask this question of most people. It's most definitely not age relevant. Do you have anything penciled into that plan on exit? Do you know when you're going? Do you know what you're going to do? Or are you staying in? How does that work for you?
Well, I'm fortunate because I'm looking at it from 2 ways. Because I'm working with data, um, because it's tied up with the technology we spoke about earlier. What I'm actually is it's not something I need to any longer worry about from a physical perspective. I can
Mm.
sit in front of a computer, and we had that time through COVID, of course, when none of us could go anywhere anyway.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
This is where I developed an awful lot of the work that I'm sort of currently embroiled with. But it does actually sort of mean I enjoy what I do.
Yeah.
I really do, particularly getting to the murky depths and finding certain things out. And I mean,
Mm.
when you're working with scenery like we've got in my backdrop, for example, and you
Mm.
get down onto the south
Oh,
coast and you're working with properties on the coastal path, and you get all these flood reports and things like that, because we get flooding issues with properties we do. So it is just absolutely fascinating. And there's no reason I might be able to cut back in hours, but I've got a good team out there. Um, and I think, sad to admit, and we've got to be careful about this in a business, that we aren't the be all and end all of the business. We
100%.
need to be looking at, hey, what would happen if you fell over?
Yeah.
Could anybody else carry on doing it? And certainly they could.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So, Hamish, just to jump into your thoughts there, again, the listener will understand this terminology, but they may not be at your stage. So, level 1 is a business that has sort of fluctuation between being, let's say, busy and not so busy, cash positive, cash negative. Level 2 is the roundabout business that's extremely productive, but requires a big effort from the people that own it, or the person that owns it, that runs it. Level 3 is a business that's able to function without the owner. It's able to operate in his stead. So he can either exit, or he can stay involved, or he can take a passive income, whatever. The point is freedom of choice, Hamish. Isn't it? It's getting to the point where you can choose. Are you getting there? Would you say that to the listener, you are at that stage now?
Not quite. What it is, I do need to put in a senior management person, and
Okay.
the sooner I can do that, the better. And actually, that is in itself very, very important, because the last thing we ever want to do in our business is pick somebody to work with that thinks the way that we do. Because if we come up with a stupid idea, they'll agree with it
Okay.
because it sounded good at the time. So we need
Yeah, that's
character traits. We need to study the characters of individuals that
yeah,
we want, and then sort of look at that particular skill factor comes into it. But that, I
sure.
mean, that's the one thing that's missing. I've got to, if I could do, and I've done it before, I can disappear for a month and all the rest of it, and the business works perfectly. To advance the business, to take on new technology, that comes from my particular sort of end of it. So I do need to find that one. That's that one skill factor that I don't actually have at the moment, just that particular one. But
Yeah,
as you said, it's being able to, it's looking at it. I'm always looking. I'm always looking.
yeah, sure. Well, that's great, and no doubt people listening will resonate. I think so. Let's just drill down one more level. Are you planning to correct that gap in the next year, or is that one for 24 months' time? How do you feel
I
about
would,
that?
I would hope to do it within 1 year.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
I've almost got with people that I could do it with, but it wasn't quite the right sort of mix.
Okay, that
Um,
happens. Yeah,
so
yeah,
as you said, Ellis, that does actually sort of happen. And it's
sure,
trying to get the right mix. As clever as we think we may be,
sure.
sometimes we don't get quite the right sort of character.
And
Uh,
and
so it's a matter of it's evolution, really.
yeah, okay. And are you going to fill this post through the hidden job market? Is it networked, or would you go out there and actually advertise and look to recruit? How do you
It
feel
is,
that?
it is more than likely. Um, the style of business that we work in is the
Mhm.
sort of business that people need to know you. It's quite a serious thing people are actually sort of doing. And solicitors have got to look, they're the ones that are looking at the risk involved to anybody buying a property. So it's
Mm,
very important that they are able to trust the people that they're actually working with.
sure.
And you don't actually go out, solicitors don't go out looking for people like me. I need
Okay.
to I need to make
Go knock on the
them
door.
aware of what I actually sort of do. I need to demonstrate my presence sort of out there, become to be known out there, maybe meet them at a few times. It could be networking sort of types of meetings. It could be going to a Thames Valley Chamber meeting, any of these people
Okay.
attending. So it's a matter of getting myself known. So whilst I'm doing that, of course, I'm looking at other people. I know an awful lot of people in the industry. However, I've still got in my mind, I don't have to do it quickly, Alice. So the great thing is, whilst I'm running the business, I'm also actually, I'm looking at people to collaborate with, because
Mhm.
that's what I am, a collaborator. I'm trying to save people the time and the energy from having to find people themselves out there in the business. So
So so it feels like somebody that's watching this podcast will be of the view that Hamish has reached a point of critical mass where he's able to go at his pace, yeah, so he can move with urgency but not with desperation. That's kind of what I'm hearing there.
well,
Yeah.
the urgency bit is at a time to suit. At a time to suit is the
Okay.
important thing.
Okay. Can we talk about marketing? Because you're beginning to touch on the subject there, and we always take a view here at Power Play that marketing, along with team, are the two most important pillars of a successful level 3 business. So, in other words, if you have the marketing right and you have the team right, then you've got a winning recipe. Be weak on either one, and you're going to be involved. So what is what is you've mentioned networking, you've mentioned relationship management. And by the way, everybody watching and listening, if you haven't had an opportunity yet, jump on Hamish's website, Search and Convey Solutions. It's really worth a look. So, how, just for the listeners' benefit, where do your inquiries come from? How do you generate new business from a marketing perspective?
Well, initially, there are several different sort of aspects. As I mentioned earlier, one of the most important things that I do, and one of the great challenges, I, for the first 17, 18 years of what we're doing, I steered clear of anything to do with it. I'm a member of LinkedIn for all that particular sort of time. Facebook, I thought was a joke anyway, so I never even bothered with it. And all of these other things.
Never heard of it, Hamish. Don't know what you're talking about.
Now, here's an interesting thing, because this audience that we've got looking into us at this particular moment, I would imagine a good 75% of them haven't even known a world without the internet. We have had the internet.
Yeah, I agree.
And then we start coming sort of close down. There's a large number of them hadn't heard of, came on board after Facebook had arrived, and after all of this clever sort of software, and so many. Do you know the very first computer I ever saw is worth speaking about? It was the size of my office, inside a glass case, and people would go into it in white suits with their helmets on because you couldn't have dust. And that was the very first computer I saw. And
yeah, now the average mobile phone's probably 100 times more powerful than that one was, right?
No, I got carried away there. What was the question?
The question is, you were just telling us that for a long time you were not massively connected to the subject of marketing, but that sounds like it's changing now. So tell us about that.
Well, what I actually sort of do, my first engagement now, 75 to 80% of it is actually sort of through LinkedIn. The great thing about LinkedIn gives us the professional background to the kinds of people that I would work with.
Sure.
I'm actually going to work with ostensibly conveyancers. The majority of the ones I prefer are the independent solicitors, but you can actually identify them actually sort of on LinkedIn. And there are various meetings you can actually sort of attend, because I do, and they tend to be mostly online because it's easier. You can meet, because as I mentioned earlier, we cover the whole of England and Wales. So I don't need to be in Southsea, for example.
No.
I can speak to a solicitor in Southsea like we're speaking to each other now.
Fascinating.
And I can work with them, and I know somebody down in Southsea who covers their council. So largely online meetings. And so I meet people through that, and I contact, and I then sent out the contact, and then I actually start building on that over time, sending out mostly emails initially. And then what I do, I transfer the emails. Once I've been sending those out for a while and they don't mind me sending them, we almost always have to say, hey, look, if you don't want to receive any more of these,
just,
please let us know, because the last thing you want to know is the two things, really, because Google doesn't like it. If you send emails to people, they just end up going in the bin. So they recognize it, and you don't want it either. You're wasting your time.
Absolutely.
So it's with what I do, it's nurturing. And because what I do, I establish relationships, because if I have the relationship with a solicitor, they are going to be buying on a regular basis because they have so many cases going on a month-to-month basis.
So there's the lifetime value of a client for you.
Absolutely. So this is why the nurturing, the time with the nurturing, to give that confidence.
Love it.
I mean, sometimes I would actually give, some of the searches for free, the ones that I can actually control, they can have those for free, compare them with what they're doing. But if you like, it's this nurturing process, and I basically sort of build it. And then it's a matter of identifying, are they people that I can help? Because there's a lot of solicitors I can't help because of what they're doing and the way that they do it.
So I think we've identified there, we've ring-fenced there how Search and Convey Solutions is generating its marketing momentum. That's great. I'm sure there are people out there that are not leveraging LinkedIn in the ways they should be. And you're a great example of how and why and how to do it. So that's brilliant. Thank you for sharing, Hamish. Well, can you tell us a little bit about management now? The people in your team. I guess, in fact, let's start with your style. How would you describe your management style? What kind of manager are you? And And then let's talk a little bit about how you manage people.
Well, the situation is I've always been of the belief myself, when I've worked for anybody in the past, that I'm really working with them.
Okay.
I expected guidance when guidance was needed, but if the guidance
Mhm.
wasn't needed, I fully respected the fact they were employing me to actually get on and sort of do. I wouldn't interfere with it, providing target. I say targets. I don't want to overwhelm the situation because I'm very I'm hands off, but very involved. I do
Okay.
think it's so very, very important to give whoever we're working with, whatever our team members become, to work with them to give them their head so
Okay.
they can excel at what they're good at.
So the space to express
Give them
themselves.
space, but also I think there is a need to actually spend, and in work hours as well, take time out to make sure you're spending time with them on a regular basis.
Perfect.
Within
Okay.
work, and it's work. It's to do with work, so it's work time. Yes,
Cool. Yeah.
go out and have some fun time outside of it, but you want to actually put the space there to encourage them to be able to sort of come and speak to you about anything, anytime. So I
Mm.
always have it. We don't need it now because my team, we were up to a team of 10 at one particular stage, and it was a bit cramped in the office.
Mm.
However, we can work. We're very fortunate we can do the virtual thing, and that type of management's very different. I must admit I made some errors there when we became a
Okay.
virtual office
Okay.
because I wasn't keeping in touch with the team. I
Okay.
regularly make sure, it's rare that a day goes past I don't speak to all the team members.
Exactly.
So I will every week there'll be probably something like a half hour to an hour I will actually sort of spend, and I don't mind taking the time out just to go through how their day is going there. And obviously a bit of background as well. Because if
Perfect.
they're happy in their environment, if they feel relaxed in their environment and they can discuss what's actually sort of going on, because that's why I think the personal time we spend with them. So I mean it's one of the great advantages, of course, but with it being virtual, because you just speak to them.
So
Uh,
it sounds to me like we're learning a lot about the culture in this company, Hamish. And there's an old saying, isn't it, that everybody's business is a reflection of them in reality. And it feels to me like the culture that you're organising here or delivering is really authentic. It is you in reality. I think in terms of your values and the way that you're rolling there, you know. So give us an example of the kind of questions that you ask a team member. So if you're touching base with them every day, that's great. They've got space, but they're also feeling that Hamish is close. So give everybody just one question. What's your favourite question to ask an employee?
I suppose it's a little bit tough to actually answer that because I know them so well.
Okay.
I know
How long have they been
because
with you?
all of the who is Gemma's been working with. She's only been working with us for 5 years. Uh, I mean Paula's been working with us since 2007,
That's cool.
and Shelley, she's been working since 2012. So I know them almost intimately, really. I know about their sort of families. So it's really a sort of family sort of type environment because they are able also to work from home because of what we're actually able to do. Because all we need is the PCs.
Of
Um,
course. Yeah.
and so it's basically just finding, and I can actually pick up, I think that when you get to know people, you can understand the way they're speaking as to almost the way they're feeling. And I think it's one of the great advantages. I mean, it's not quite the same as being in the same room as them. However,
No.
you can actually pick up from people their vibes, if you like. I mean,
100%.
you can actually pick up what's actually sort of going on. So you can. So it's a matter. It's more what you see and what you do with what you see than what you
Mhm.
say initially,
Yeah. Okay.
because you
Okay.
get the feeling up, and then you can actually sort of start speaking about this sort of family. Because I know Gemma, for example, she's got two children at school still, and it's half term this week, and so that's obviously going to be the first part. Are they driving you totally mad? Um, and do you know what I mean? So it's trying to speak to them on a personal level, and
Yeah.
then we can actually look into the business sort of side of things as well, because they're very, very independent of what they
Mhm.
do.
I'm
They've
not
seen that,
surprised.
and they
Yeah.
know so much more
I'm not
about
surprised.
what they do
Yeah.
than I know about it.
And therein lies the art of great management. You don't need to know. You just need to know how to help them be the best they can be, right? That's
That's what
very
I try and do. That's what I try and do. Yeah, certainly.
so. Again, just to add context for everybody, what I'm hearing there is both leadership and management. To be quite honest with you, Hamish, there's leadership, if you like, is the people side of the equation where you really have an affinity. There's an old saying, isn't there? You don't manage a team. You manage the individuals within a team, and that's the reality of it. So there's great leadership, um, inspirational connectivity, nurture, understanding of each individual. And then I'm also getting the flavor of management, which is the process side of it. Are we achieving what we need to achieve when we need to achieve it? But you're obviously doing that quite gently because you've got respect. And I think there is, you almost have a sensation of not requiring, not needing to push people too hard, I'm guessing, by the sounds of it. Is that a fair summary?
Well, one of the great things is because they enjoy what they're doing
Mm,
and enjoying the environment in which they can do their work,
mm,
there really isn't the pressure. And
okay.
almost some of the times, oh, crikey, I'm been so busy. I was going to do that. I said, look, relax. There are occasional panic sort of situations. Somebody's wanting to move house and they need a report before they move out. Yeah, that's panic mode. But that's a rarity because of the way we try and manage the whole sort of scenario.
The
So it's a
workforce.
matter of,
Yeah.
again, trying to give them that space to be the best they at what they do. And you can
Mm,
actually determine, say, oh, I tell you what, that one's just come in. Anything you do to get that out today, if you do something with that, it'd be absolutely great.
mm.
Knowing full well tomorrow would work.
I think a less adept, a less experienced business owner, leader, manager would be striving for what you're striking, but would make the mistake of abdication. They would not be close enough. I think the cementing point here is that you're touching base every day. So you're able to know intuitively whether or not they're on it or not. And if there are gaps, that for me, I see a lot of this in small business, Hamish, where people give too much space. They don't stay close enough because of head trash or some fear around it, and then they wonder why things don't happen on time as they should. And you're clearly mitigating that, which is great. Well, listen, we've got time for one more question this afternoon before we have to wrap this particular spotlight up. And we've talked about visualization, we've talked about effective management, we've talked planning, we've talked about the general sort of culture around your business. If you had something, a piece of advice to give to people on the core subject of finance, managing, either accessing finance or managing cash and cash flow, etc., what would it be?
To do with finance, that's a difficult one because I'm not a financier, so I don't know the best answer. But something I have actually sort of
From
found
your perspective.
from my particular perspective, it is to try and unload on somebody. I used to be a maths teacher actually, so but to try and unload on somebody the work that's required to keep an eye on what's happening on a day-to-day basis and push that through. Now, I'm a great believer in whenever you can is to try and evolve. And the great thing is now, and this wasn't available when we first started in anything like the same way, either virtual assistants who can
Okay.
actually turn around and say, and it might be half an hour a day, it might be an hour a week, but you can get people to do that particular work because by virtue of the software we now have, because of if you're putting in the right levels of security, you can get somebody to work out, you can get them to do the day-to-day stuff. And then
Okay.
what I can actually do at the end of the week, they get the information together for me. And I've got a time set every sort of Monday. It's on a Monday I look at it. I look at the finances every Monday to see how things are performing.
Super.
But I think if we don't have somebody there doing it, we've got to push everything through and keep an eye on it. But the software has helped. The link with the banks have now helped. The
Mm,
way that the tax people work, there's so many nice little links there that
sure.
you can almost read it. Some of the things it actually does all the calculations for you because you're using the right software. Whereas when
Absolutely.
we started off, of course, it was all on a spreadsheet. Um,
Well, I mean, and yeah, it absolutely was. So again, let's summarize and pull it all together for the viewer. So I guess what we're saying there is make sure that we delegate the basic day to day so that you can concentrate on building and running the business and interpreting the data that they give.
That's right.
Yeah,
Rather than having to focus on what's sort of going on. And they
yeah,
can keep an eye on the invoices, have the invoices being paid and stuff of that particular sort of
sure.
nature.
And how often do you take a look at your cash flow then and your P&L, for example?
But I actually look at it briefly. I've got this serious period every Monday. I look at it every Monday to see how
Perfect.
things are going every
That's
Monday.
excellent.
But I also once a month I spend a little bit longer. And funny, I tend to do that over the weekend. I'll sit
Yeah.
down on a Saturday morning,
Okay.
month end, just after month end, and I will sit down and actually sort of look through everything and make sure everything's gone through that we're expecting it to go through, and keep
Okay.
a tighter idea on things.
So I can hear the maths teacher still in you, Hamish. He's definitely hiding in there, isn't he?
Well, annoyingly, I enjoy doing things like this. When I moved into engineering from teaching, I was trained by the company secretary to do things like wages and all sorts of stuff.
Okay.
I mean, a qualified bookkeeper, but I don't like. Do you know? It's so boring doing it.
Oh yeah, go build the
Some
business, Hamish. You don't
some
want to
people
do
love it. Some people love it. Let them do it. Let them do it.
their
Those are the sort
special.
of people. Get the people that like to do the things you don't like to do. That's why it's a big mistake. Don't ever get anybody that's the same as you are in your business.
If there was one word that summarized Hamish up, if that summed Hamish up, and we look back over time and work out this word means why Hamish has been successful and why he will continue to be successful, what would the word be?
I think why? Why am I doing it?
That's the question, right?
And I know why am I doing it. I've got the vision, the feel, because the great thing about the why, because we've been through some tough times business wise, and particular tough times health wise, these things actually should happen. But if you know what you're looking towards and you're keeping an eye on that trail, that pathway that you're following, that
Perfect.
why in front of you that's always going to be there. That's always going to be there. If you think it's just a good idea, I wouldn't bother.
So the
It
passion.
needs to be. It needs to be something to take you on a journey that you really want to go on.
What a, what a what a lovely way to put it. So the magnet that's pulling you through the journey is the why. That's brilliant, Hamish. Thank you so much for sharing your story with everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure to interview you and work with you today. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you indeed, Alice.
You're welcome. We'll
Thank
see
you,
you soon.
everybody, for listening.
And we'll see you soon for another round at some stage in the future, yeah?
Indeed.
Thank you, Hamish. Bye-bye. Take care.